This is your Monday Daily Delivery. I am Michael Rand. Patrick Reusse on with me in just a second here. Had a lot to talk about with Patrick, talking about Tom Kelly and the genius that was the TK era and 2 World Series championships. Also got into the ire of Mike Zimmer and how that this preseason, this training camp has seemed to take a turn for Mike Zimmer from his mood standpoint. And I guess a 33-6 preseason loss will do that to a guy. Patrick Reusse back on Monday's Daily Delivery. Patrick, how you doing this morning?
I am just fine, sir.
Good to hear it. I saw another good weekend for the Twins. I don't necessarily want to talk so much about the on-field stuff, but that took 2 out of 3 from Tampa Bay. That's 3 series wins against 3 pretty good teams lately. Too little, too late. Where was this version of Column made, by the way, at the beginning of the year? They could have used that.
Actually, I thought that the first couple of times they used him in the same situation, that it was the same Column A. He just got away with it. But since then, he's been throwing the ball pretty good. He's got the little movement again, and he's throwing strikes, and he's not getting himself in, he's not putting 2 guys on base and stuff like that. I guess, who knows? I'm sure they'll be, they're saying, see, it wasn't that bad a decision. He just had a little rusty period. Yeah, 4 months. So that was the problem. 4 months while the season went in the tank. It's kind of funny that, he was so bad he couldn't get traded, right? Nobody had any interest in him. Otherwise, they would have traded him. Of course, he's making 7 or something.
At least, 7 or 8.
Yeah, 7 or 8, yeah. But it is kind of funny now. He's wandering in there and finishing off games, and the most unreliable guy in the bullpen lately has been Duffy, who's who's one of their best. So this is all without Taylor Rogers too. They were, they telling him, shutting him down, and the bullpen is. I was a little surprised we didn't see now that Manaea over the weekend. Is he got something wrong with him? Because I kind of like that guy.
I think they put him on. Good. I thought they put him on the injured list. I could be wrong about that.
They put him on. Man, I don't know what the hell's wrong with him. But I like him.
Me too.
He throws hard. You got to change up, and I don't know. Polanco's he had a couple of bad days, but then he gets the ball and knocks in a run yesterday. But Arise has been terrific when he's agreed to play, and I don't know. They're sometimes you just don't want to get too excited about stuff that happens in August and September when you're out of it. I remember, but the one I always remember is way back when Gene Mock walked away. Johnny Gorel, 1980. That was a terrible team. They were god awful, and they won. Johnny Gorel became the manager, and Johnny was one of the least dynamic guys of all time, and basically quit early in 1981 because he couldn't handle it. But they won 12 in a row.
Is that right?
In September, they won 12 in a row, and you're saying, okay. That was a good lesson for old Uncle Pat, because I said, okay. Don't pay any attention to September when your team stinks, okay? So
there you go.
The idea that you're developing somebody. But yeah, it's a little better. But we were talking before we started here. They had to really be looking at themselves and shaking their heads when only 21,000 people showed up for the big reunion on Saturday night. I went down to see it because and they had a good turnout. Shane Mack never comes back for those for some reason. I don't know why, and a couple others. But, it was a big turnout, and it was pretty embarrassing to me that these guys are walking in from the bullpen. They made even Bob Gebhardt, who's had 3 back surgeries, and some of the other fellow, Tony O, limping in on his bad knees and stuff, although he's got new knees now. But man, they're waving to the crowd, and there's nobody there. There's probably about 16,000 people in the ballpark by the time when they walked them out. It's generational. It's 30 years, but I don't know. I have the impression that that crowd that would have been really devoted to this team is they're kind of the afraid to go downtown people. Although, let me say this. I left about 8:30 and made a stop at a local restaurant at
Yeah.
8:45, and there was a lot of Viking fans still downtown. There was a lot of people wandering around downtown and going to restaurants, and that the Lions place was jam packed full. Murray's was full. There were people downtown. It was fun to see. It was good to see, and still a little later there were still people walking, and so that was the Viking fans who showed up decided to go and have a few drinks afterwards after that fine show that the Vikings put on for them. But anyway, that was I wanted to mention that there were people downtown, so that was good to see anyway.
Oh, that's interesting, and it was a busy sports day because I think those two teams played, and Minnesota United had a home game same day. I want to get back to the Vikings in a little bit. I want to get your thoughts on Mike Zimmer and just kind of where they are. I talked about that a little bit at the outset of the show as well. But let's talk about Tom Kelly for a few minutes, just because you had a really nice column on TK over the weekend, setting up, the big reunion weekend, the 30 years since the 91 World Series. Last time, by the way, that the major men's pro team in this state played for a championship, let alone won one, was 91. Right. But just, I wasn't here for a lot of the TK era. I moved to Minneapolis in 94 when I went to school. Saw some of the tail end of it, the worst of it, I guess.
Yes.
Understanding Tom Kelly seems to be a difficult errand, but do we fully appreciate what he accomplished here? And how do we kind of make sense of a whole tenure that included 2 world championships and then a whole bunch of terrible years and then a retirement at age 51, which nobody really does. And he just never went back to anything managerial anyway.
No, it was, I called him Tuesday, I think, and said I wanted to do this thing. And he said, well, next 2 days are pretty busy. He said, I'd be okay Wednesday morning. And so he said earlier the better. So I got there at 8:30, and I have a really good relationship with him through the years. There were some low points, as there has to be in that long a period, but he lives in this little Maplewood neighborhood that he's just, same neighbors all these years. These guys are his buddies. He gets it. Whoever gets up first in the morning, snow blows the other guy's driveway, and that whole, it's just a little blue collar neighborhood. The police chief of Maplewood for years lives next to him, and that it's not
sure,
he gave me a sort of an explanation as to, I asked him that about, did you ever say, why don't I come back? I should come back. He had an opportunity. I know the Red Sox tried to hire him. There was even rumors of the Dodgers. He wouldn't have done well in the LA market. Too many people coming after him. He liked to, have a small group of media that he could know who was who,
sure,
and that stuff. But, he told me something about, he missed a couple of plays that year that happened out on the field, just kind of one individual little play and here and there. And he started questioning himself as to whether he was as sharp as he used to be. And, 2001, and it was kind of he's a different kind of cat. He's from New Jersey. He's got his best buddies are some guy who used to own a dog track or run a dog track, Leo McCarthy, and Leo's buddy Russell and McElhammy. These are his guys, and it's a different, I'm rambling here, but when they had a day for him to mark his 1,000th victory, I believe it was his 1,000th, or one of his victories. The guy who the guy that threw out the ceremonial first pitch was the handicapper at the dog track in Hudson. Who was a good. I mean, he's not hobnobbing with never
not high society.
With high society. Although Carl, Polad,
right,
loved him, and he said Polad tried to keep him, but. I really don't. Yeah, I have a hard. I'm like everybody else. I have a hard time explaining him fully. But what struck me again after that long conversation is what gets stuck in his head. The stuff he remembers is not the stuff, as I pointed out in that column. It's the stuff he remembered. The big memory he had of the young Puck when he had him in Florida Instructional League and everything was that the guys who were taunting him and him getting up and angrily saying no more. And to him, he saw that as a streak that would lead this talented guy to greatness, because he was not going to accept
right.
being pushed around, or and he relates that to how he's going to play baseball too, and a big admirer of players. But I think one thing about him that we have to realize is these guys that he won the World Series with, 7 of them at least these were his guys. He had them in the Instructional League, he had them in Orlando and the Southern League. He knew all these guys when they were the nucleus of those teams when they were young guys, and he taught them, helped teach them to play the game right, make the plays in the field, don't do stupid things on the bases, and his big thing is pitching, and if you pitch it and catch it, you're going to win. And then came the next generation that he really didn't deal with when they were young, when they were real young. He wasn't like managing them and single
right.
age.
He got him when they came to the big leagues.
Got him when they got to the big leagues. And he'd look at him and he'd go to the Instructional League and stuff, but they didn't, the Todd Walker generation, the Scott Stahoviak generation, some of those guys he liked, but they did not play the game with the, I don't want to use the word commitment, but I don't know what else, but they were more casual about the fundamentals of making plays, being in the right place, moving runners, all the things that they're now lost to the Bomba generation. But he just, a lot of those guys he did not get along with, and those guys would have been better off with Rocco telling them how good they were or something like that. You know what I'm saying? So it's I don't know. But it is interesting. I mean, he was, losing his son is obviously a real impact on him. And, but he got, one thing he got really into the last 15 years probably is golf. He plays a lot of golf with his buddies, the guys from the neighborhood. He's not, he goes out he sneaks out to Somerset once in a while, but I'm sure that he, because Dave Duchesne's out there and he's a buddy of those guys, but even when he plays out there, I'm sure that the golf garb is not elite or anything like that. He plays with these blue collar guys, and he and his wife are, she's a golfer too, and they play together some. But he told me that when he went to Carl and to tell him he was going to quit, he said that walk down the steps after I did that was the longest walk of my life, because I certainly had my doubts, but never came back. 20 years. He was, I've always said that he's got a lot of Bud Grant in him, but different personalities, and Bud's very much motivated by what's in it for Bud.
Sure.
I love Bud.
We're not going to have a Tom Kelly garage sale, is what you're telling me?
Yeah, we're not going to have that. We're not going to have that because he wouldn't want that many people hanging around,
right.
So, but as far as looking at a moment with a team or something, a very logical conclusion to, he and Bud are the same, and the fact that they're looking to okay, what if I do this? They're
Yeah.
always not a lot of impulsive stuff. Not a
Sure.
lot of impulsive stuff. It's what makes sense for my team kind of guy. He's got a lot of that in him, and he's there's no doubt he's having a lot of trouble with the 4 and a third inning starts and stuff like that, because he was telling me his neighbor Pete came to him early this year, and Pete was saying to Tom, this team can't hit. They can't get any hits. And he'd say, Pete, don't worry about hitting. It's pitching. Their problem's pitching. No, Pete, but no. Pete, no, Pete. It's pitching. It's pitching. We'll just fix the pitching. Everything will be okay, Pete. It's always been that way for him. Pitching. What are the pitching matchups? What are the it's all and the reason they were rotten from 93 to 2000, even though like in 96, even though Puck went blind, they
scored like a million runs that year.
They had Knobloch,
Molitor
were the two best players in the league, but the pitching stunk, and he could never find the pitching staff again, never develop the pitching staff again. And that's Tom Kelly. Are you going to pitch today or not? If you don't pitch, you got no chance. So I don't know. It's just like him when he's talking to you and when he's on the Twin telecast, and the public kind of didn't like him as well as us baseball guys did, because he always told you something. I'm having a hard time making my point here, just like TK. It gets elaborate when you try to talk about him, but he's a different kind of cat, and it's an audience that it takes it. Without I'm 75 years old. I like the way he looks at baseball, but I could see where he'd have a hard time with the modern generation team, because he'd tell them all the things they were doing wrong. So
Tom Kelly, bench coach. Think it through. Yeah.
Well, he's not a big. One thing he said about LaRusse, he went on and on about LaRusse.
Yeah.
Before LaRusse called him, but he went on and on about the fact that you can tell that LaRusse was running. That when LaRusse came back, it was with I'm the manager. I make out the lineup. I'm not. TK would not do well spending 45 minutes with the guy from the analytic department coming down and having a daily discussion with him on how the lineup should look. That's that ain't happening.
No.
And and he's not anti-analytics. It's you show me your numbers and then I'll write out my lineup. But I'm not going to waste 45 minutes of my morning, my early afternoon, talking to some guy about, where, how he would have had a hard time with the dramatic shifts too. There's no doubt about it. But it's a very unique guy. That's for sure. And he's our dear friend Bracken. We both love Bracken. But Bracken's kind of approach to the one I'll always remember is when Bracken's when in '87 he decides, he talks to Harvey Mizell, the hypnotist, about whether he could help the Twins play better on the road. And I begged him not to say that, not to ask him. I was on a trip for the St. Paul paper. And I said, don't do it. You're going to put him in a bad mood for the rest of the road trip, which he did. So, he doesn't brook that kind of nonsense.
No.
He never brooked nonsense. It was, let's just, ask me a baseball question. I'll give you an answer type of stuff. So
he might have enjoyed managing Johan. Too bad their paths didn't cross.
There were a lot of that's Eddie Mahler. He goes on and on about Mahler. One thing, I'm getting a little long here, but one thing he was talking about Molitor, because when he left, he didn't know if they were going to hire. He thought they might hire Molitor. He said either one, Gardy, or he said Gardy deserved it. He'd put in more time, but Molitor, he said, the thing about Molitor is, I've told him a few times. I said, you gotta tone down your expectations here, Paul, because he put his hand way up high and he says, Paul, this is you when it comes to understanding baseball, playing baseball. This is you. And he had his hand up over his head. And then he brought it down about a foot. And he said, and this is the other really good players. This is the other really good players. And he had it brought down a foot. And he said, and this is the rest of them. And he had that down by his waist. And he said, yeah. And then he said, you can't expect these guys, then with the hand down by the waist, to be up here where you are. You gotta realize that you're talking to people that don't understand how to play the game, and of course have the ability to play the game that you did. People don't know. I did talk to Molly after because he was doing
radio, wasn't he? Yeah,
Saturday, Friday and Saturday, and I talked to Molly Friday, and he said I had from him walking by when he was down there in spring training. And just saying, hey, Paul, not telling him do this, do that, but say things he noticed and things that, that maybe you want to try this. He has 10 pages of notes on that.
Wow.
From his basically the Kelly observation philosophy thing. And, I think it's a loss to the Twins that he no longer goes to spring training because he just doesn't feel that these guys would have any interest in hearing what he doesn't have any bitterness towards Falvey and Levine, but he just knows they don't want him around. So they've
got him doing some stuff this year, though. I've seen him in the Saints dugout.
Yeah. They might have had him stop by.
But not the full on instructional stuff.
Yeah. Anyway, that's him.
Yeah, well, I enjoyed that. It's he's a tough guy to understand, but just in terms of accomplishment, I mean, 2 World Series speak for themselves, and at least charting a course for kind of setting the tone for what became some pretty good teams in the 2000s as well when Gardy took over. Few minutes left. Let's talk Mike Zimmer. Transition to another guy in charge who was not happy the other day. He ran through. I'll play the little clip here in just a sec. He ran through a list of like 6 or 7 things he hated from that preseason game. It was the halftime interview with I think NFL Network. Talked about all the things that weren't going well. The punter didn't like the punter. When you mention the punter in a preseason game, it's a pretty good idea. You're in a bad mood. But here's how he ended that little rant. I'm going to use this like probably 15, 20,000 times on this podcast as time goes on.
We didn't tackle well. We made the wrong checks on defense with the safeties. We throw an interception for a touchdown. Go 3 and out the first 2 series. Terrible punts. So other than that, it's been great.
So yeah, basically, other than that, it's been great. Was the Mike Zimmer quote, and
it's
I've got kind of wonder if it's going to be that kind of year. Now it's only 1 preseason game. It's a few weird things happening, in training camp and earlier on. Let's give a little room to breathe for the second preseason game where they actually play their starters. None of the real high impact guys played on Saturday, but what's the impression you get from Mike Zimmer is not Mike, even a poorly played win can put Mike Zimmer in a bad mood, but what do you get from Zimmer's mood right now?
Right now, here's what's happened to him in my opinion. He was out there. I was out there that first Wednesday. I haven't been there since. I guess they run around and I don't care. But he was in a great mood. He was optimistic.
Yes.
He was cheery. And then they started getting then they got the positive COVID in the quarterback room. And then he had a bunch of injuries and then things, goofy stuff started happening. And I think the instant disappointment level with these, and the fact that they have the lowest at least a week ago had the lowest vaccination rate in the league is just the fact that he's got players who aren't committed enough to the team to get vaccinated has driven him nuts. The punter is a non-vaxxer, apparently. That guy won't be here Wednesday, will he?
Yeah. Feels like they were kind of.
It's and I'm not blaming it all. I'm not blaming it all on the vaccination thing.
Of course not.
It changed his. I think he just got slapped in the head. He expected to come out there Wednesday, have this robust first practice, not hitting each other, but everybody being, let's do it. This can be our year. And for the next 2 weeks, all he's been able to talk about is who's vaccinated, who's not, who's going to play, who's injured, not. Because Cousins saying idiotic stuff about hiding behind plexiglass and stuff like this. I mean, it's the fact that he sees less than a full commitment from his team as an old crusty coach. I think that's driven him off the deep end. I really think. Now they, as you say, I think they're still talented. I think they could recover. They still got guys like Eric Kendricks, who to me is a first team All Pro, fantastic, committed to the team, would do anything. But you have guys that Harrison Smith. We don't know about Thielen. You got guys that were his guys that are now questionable because of that. The whole vax thing is, and I don't know if any of these guys have gotten vaccinated since or what's going on, but I think he sees it as I think he's discovered this lack of commitment, what he considers a lack of commitment to doing whatever his whole thing is, you got to do whatever you can do to win, right? Whatever you can do to help the team win, which is kind of the Kelly approach.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah.
And I think it has driven him nuts that he doesn't see that from enough of this team. And then to have you go out and now you've got, your top 30 guys don't play, and the guys you put out there, you're testing your depth, right? And they play like complete idiots, and they stink, and they get trampled by Denver, and everybody's up leaving at halftime. And this is the glorious return to a full dome. And I think he's beside himself. And he also knows this. He's fired if they don't make the playoffs, right? So that and maybe he's fired if they don't win a playoff game. But I'm not ready to say it's going to go off the rails, but I thought they were going to be really good. And now to me, football is, you got your Kansas City Chiefs with Pat Mahomes, and you have each year you got 4 or 5 teams that, okay, they're too good to fail, right? They're too good to fail. There's a few of those, but there's 5 that stink, 6, that there's nothing that can be done to help them. But you got 20 of them. Are guys going to get hurt? And what's the vibe you're going to develop? And how are you going to get started? Are you going to be 1-3 and fighting uphill all year? Or are you going to, to me, football more than any sport is vibe. Is what's the vibe? Yeah. What's the,
well, they only play 17 times now, but when you only play that much, the difference between, it's going to keep tripping me up every time, but the difference between 7 and 10 and 10 and 7 is it's nothing. It's 3 plays. It's what it is.
Yeah. And to come out and, go out and have a big effort and start rolling right off the bat. If you're 3-0, you're going to the playoffs now, right?
A lot of times, unless you're the Vikings.
If you're 0-3, you're not. But pretty much it's. I don't know. I think I think he had to go from optimism, to really strong optimism. I detected that first day, to what the hell is going on with these guys? Yeah. That's been too much for him to take so far. We'll see if he gets them back in the, doing what they want to do. But one of your problems is every time you see your quarterback, you got to grit your teeth. It's not good.
Yeah, that relation.
I mean, Aaron Rodgers, for the hell he put Green Bay through, the coach knows that, he doesn't, when Aaron Rodgers doesn't get in the room, the coach doesn't have the hair stand up on his forearms because the guy's driven him nuts like Cousins has. So I think that's part of it is, your team leader. If Cousins had just said, well, the vax is a private thing for me, but I'm certainly going to take every precaution, but his rambling, idiotic speech and Zimmer hears something like that the problem is that the quarterback room is too small and stuff. That's got to drive a guy, an old crusty football coach like Zim, who no sport is more important than pro football, of everybody being on board. Because let's face it, the game is no fun to play. It's the meanest, nastiest, lousiest game that's ever been invented in the way it's played in the modern context. It's dangerous. It's brutal. People are going to get hurt. You're not going to live as long as you should because of it. And so it's got to be like full commitment, and to have to put up with what he's had to put up with from some of these guys is throwing him off his game. I just, from a distance, listening to the quotes and everything and seeing the level of his frustration, it's very interesting. And he's old time coach too. And if Matt LaFleur felt this way, and he probably should have, the way the Packers played last weekend, he wouldn't express it. Right. Zim can't help himself.
He can't.
When he's mad, he can't help himself. Now, all we need is the kicker to start missing a couple.
Oh,
and then,
Patrick.
Then we can go paranoid on that.
Oh, Patrick. Yeah. Don't even say it yet. Well, we'll see how that shakes out.
I got to admit, I'm a little bit of a sadist, and I love it when his kickers starts missing a couple because he goes insane.
Starts going for 2 in the preseason. Then you know it's not going well.
That's right. Unbelievable. Yes. Yeah. Then he's if I was around him, I couldn't help but, like, on Monday morning to be at a meeting, the casual meeting when you're having a cup of coffee, say, geez, that Daniel Carlson made 3 more long ones.
Oh man.
That's to me, that's encapsulates the Mike Zimmer era. He cut after 2 games.
2 games.
One of the best kickers in the league.
2 games.
He got mad because he tied with Green Bay 29-29.
And we're gonna look back on that too. Like, let's say the season doesn't go well. This will be my final point. Let's see this season doesn't go well, and it does end the tenure. It's going to be 4 years without Cousins, 4 years with Cousins, and just the pressure that built when they signed Kirk Cousins.
Yes,
that big money deal, and he was feeling it right away. And that was 2018 when they cut the kicker. There's a clear split in the Mike Zimmer era between those first 4 and what could be the last 4 years, and we'll see what happens.
I agree.
Thank you, sir. We'll get you next weekend.
All righty.
Great stuff with Patrick, as always. Good stuff coming up this week, too. Joe Rossi, defensive coordinator for the Gopher football team, should be with me this week. Spencer Hall, college football maven, will be with me later this week, too. Plenty of other good stuff to talk about. Thanks for joining me here on Daily Delivery, and we'll catch you again on Tuesday.